That was a great panel.
Yeah, and just really respect the honesty, vulnerability, and candor that they all shared as well. And the really practical advice, because we don't always end up where we're supposed to be, and it's about the choices you make when you find yourself, even when you think you've done the due diligence. That really resonated with me as well. So thank you for moderating, and thank you to our first three speakers. We're now going to welcome on panel 4, which I'm going to moderate for the next sort of like 30 minutes, and then as Ben said, we're going to go to a Q&A. So I can't actually see the comments, but I'm hoping that you are putting in comments and questions in the chat so we can then engage with you before we close out tonight. So I'm hoping I've got 4 speakers behind the scene. 1, 2, 3. Oh, we've got one missing. Hopefully we have 4.
Nadine should be with us shortly, hopefully. Perfect. So I'll add her in when she joins.
Perfect. So what we'll do is lovely to see you all, and we'll do some introductions so the audience know who we have here. You know me, I always go A to Z. So Lindsay, you're first. So lovely to see you. Can you introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are, what you do, and where you do it, please, Lindsay?
Hi, yeah, so I'm Lindsay Patience. I am one half of Flexible Teacher Talent. So we're an organisation who support in the education sector with flexible working at an individual level, at school and trust level, but also in work in the wider sector and with the DFE. And I'm also a part-time teacher. I work 4 days a week in a school in Putney in South West London.
Awesome. It's got both hats on here then tonight, haven't we? Thinking about the different sides of the table we sit on. So thank you, Lindsay. Lovely to see you. Susie, great to have you here. Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Susie Waters and I'm Operations Manager of the Julian Teaching School Hub and Norfolk Research School based in Norwich. I think I first started really getting interested in how to promote diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging in my setting because we are based within a Catholic school, and I do quite a lot of work with the staff wellbeing team within the school. So that kind of kick-started where I am now, I guess.
Brilliant. And it's great to have you here, Susie, and I'm looking forward to hearing all the work you are doing through that lens. And last but not least, Yamina, great to see you. Do you want to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Yamina. I am currently an education project specialist at Chiltern Learning Trust, working alongside Being Luminary and Mission 44 and the Chartered College of Teaching. I always forget all the consortium organisations leading a project on increasing diversity in IGT with a focus on global majority trainee teachers. But beyond that, I'm also a Belonging Effect Associate Trainer and a freelance consultant, and I'm a former deputy head teacher in a secondary school.
So we've got a wealth of different experiences on the call. And as George said, like lived experience, leadership experience, but we've also got some regional diversity. I think we forget about that diversity sometimes. So we've got some different points of the country. So we've got 3 different parts we're going to talk about. We're going to think about the diversification of the workforce, the flexing of the workforce, and then the disruption of how we do things. So let's start with diversifying the workforce. Yamina, do you want to talk a little bit about the project you're co-leading and why it's so important for us to diversify those who are stepping into the profession?
Yeah, thank you. So this project is funded by Mission 44, which is, if you don't know, Sir Lewis Hamilton's charity foundation. It's my only claim to fame. I've never met him, anyone, although everyone keeps and the project is funded specifically for secondary to begin with, but it's really looking at increasing diversity, particularly for global majority trainee teachers, because as we can see from the NFER research from 2020 to 2024 and now even 2025, there is a appetite from trainee teachers from global majority backgrounds in application. There's a high kind of increase in the rate of them applying, but at every stage, from application stage to interview stage, all the way into kind of senior leadership, they're rejected, in contrast to their kind of white colleagues who there's actually underrepresentation when it comes to white colleagues applying for teacher training, but there's overrepresentation when it comes to every other stage, from acceptance into kind of retention in even ITT, and then obviously into senior leadership. So that's why kind of we're really working and focusing on this, and this project has been funded. It's as part of kind of other consortium organizations who are looking at diversity in education in general. But this particular project looks at kind of 3 strands. The first strand is around skits and what skits themselves and ITT providers can do to kind of remove systemic and structural barriers. And that's the first acknowledgement that there are systemic and structural barriers that stop global majority trained teachers. And actually, if we think about it from any protected characteristic, that stop colleagues from diverse background entering the profession and then staying in the profession. So what we've done is we're working with fellows of the Chartered College of Teaching who are also experts in DER, diversity, equity, inclusion, to kind of coach some skits who are part of our kind of project. And we're already on cohort 2. So we've got 20 skits at the moment working with us nationally. The second part of the project and the strand is an online course where we've asked sector experts to essentially share their kind of advice, their expertise around recruitment, retention, and specifically assessment of QTS and what the structural barriers are there, and also recommendations as well. Hi, Nadine. And then the third element is the kind of charter teacher status, because as part of this problem or issue is the fact that actually there isn't diversity in ITT workforce, in staff leadership and the workforce there. So that might be is a contributing factor to global majority trainee teachers kind of entering and staying in the profession. So we try to really look at what we can do to provide support and accreditation and networking opportunities for global majority trainee teachers and teacher educators at the moment as well. I hope I've summarized.
No, it's great summary, Yamina. Thank you so much, Nadine. It's lovely to see you. You've got a few minutes. I'll let you settle in. I'm going to go round the room and I'll come back to you. So I wanted to go to Susie next, because the work that Yamina's talking about, Susie, you've been doing through your Teaching School Hub. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've been doing and why you've been doing it?
Yeah, so I've kind of wiggled my way into a niche where I'm really interested in at what point during the life cycle of a teacher we lose certain demographics from the profession. So as Yamina, as you've just entirely accurately said, global majority people from applications to ITT onwards are at a massive disadvantage. But I'm also really interested in where we might lose LGBTQ plus colleagues, where we might lose neurodivergent or disabled colleagues. We know where we lose mothers, and looking at how the invariable consequence of those stages in the life cycle is where we end up with a system where leaders all look the same, and where it's very difficult for us to know whether that senior leader is absolutely objectively the right person for the job, when they may in fact have been the only person for the job because of all of those systemic issues further down the line. And I think that's really interesting. And that's something that as a teaching school hub, we work obviously with early career teachers largely. And when we support them, we're trying to do it in a pastoral way as well as providing training, so that we can kind of find where they have that vulnerability and support them to speak up and to ask for what they need, and to give them that kind of professional backing to do so when they're still so early in their career.
Thank you. And I feel like we're going through the kind of the lifespan of a teacher. We're going to come to Lindsay next. We become a teacher, we progress in teaching, we might then become a parent, Lindsay. And I think when we talk about diversifying the workforce, we often just think about some protected characteristics, specifically race, which we really need to address. But actually, the protected characteristic of being a parent, and we know the attrition rates are shocking when it comes to schools not being family friendly. Do you want to talk a little bit about why it's important to diversify the workforce when it comes to other identities as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And what Susie said there about when we lose mums, we know that age 30 to 39 demographic of women are a big loss from the workforce. But when Lucy and I started Flexible Teacher Talent, we were both new mums ourselves, and we thought we were going to be helping keep people in the profession through flexible working who were like us, who were mums, who had young families. And actually, the people who need flexible working are so wide ranging. The reasons that people need flexible working are huge. And we hadn't thought about people with older children. We hadn't really thought about people with health needs, people going through menopause, people with other caring responsibilities apart from children. And actually there's a huge range of reasons why you might need to work flexibly, or why you might want to work flexibly. So we're seeing that thing with millennials coming in as well, where they just want to have a more portfolio career, they just want to have a life outside of teaching. But the big focus for us has been on women and keeping women in. it is a huge issue for women. And actually, just anecdotally, I haven't got proper data on it, but we help women who have their flexible working requests turned down. And we do see an overrepresentation in people from global majority backgrounds coming to us for help. And there is some great research, well, not great, terrifying research out of the University of Kent around asking for flexible working and getting flexible working when you're from different backgrounds. And actually that is something that's really important at the recruitment stage. Can you ask as part of the process for flexible working, but also once you're in post and enroll, if you can't ask for flexible working, if you can't get flexible working, we all need it at different points in our lives. Like when I was a young deputy head teacher and I couldn't imagine having any responsibilities or commitments, and my whole life was school, I had no concept that people might want to or need to work flexibly. And actually, you know, as I've gone through my life and I've had children and I've had other things going on, you might, like any of us are in a position where we could need to work flexibly for whatever reason at some point. And your access to that and the being able to get that is really important if you want to have an inclusive school. And actually, I don't think any school can claim that they are truly inclusive if they don't offer flexible working in some form, because anyone might need to work flexibly at any point, but particularly mothers.
And I'm interested for us to dig out that data on intersectionality, because we know there's the double whammy of being a woman and a woman of colour in education, but if you're a parent as well, that's triple disadvantage. And if there's bias within not only the recruitment and retention system, but also who gets to do flexible working or be a co-leader or part-time teacher, part-time leader, then that's also, like you say, going to actually minimise and marginalise further a group who are already marginalised, which leads us on to Nadine, who wears quite a few of these hats. And Nadine, like everyone else introduced themselves in the beginning, just take a minute just to introduce who you are, what you do, where you do it, and your day job and your passion project, and then I'll come to a question for you.
Okay, hi, evening everyone, pleasure to be here. Yes, so my name is Nadine Bernard. I am a full-time, head teacher, and I'm of a primary school in Southwest London. I'm also the founder and CEO of a community interest company called Aspiring Heads, which is tackling racial inequality in leadership. I'm also most recently an author of a book called Your Leadership Matters, Empowering Educators of the Global Majority and Allies. And ultimately just love supporting, helping individuals to fulfill their potential and to defy the odds, really. Anything else?
And a mum of three.
And a mum of three, yeah. I am a mum of three, 5-year-old, also a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old. So I've got the teenage and also the younger one as well.
Got it all going on. So do you mean tell us a little bit about why you started Aspiring Heads and the impact you're having or want to be having across the system with your amazing network?
Yeah, so Aspiring Heads was founded in 2020 when, you know, the impact of race was kind of magnified in terms of the lack of equality and so forth. And so I developed a program called Aspiring Heads, which is a leadership program that lasts over 6 months. And the whole premise of it is to encourage, empower, and help and support those from the global majority to step into leadership positions, but ultimately just to progress their careers, whatever they feel that looks like. And so ultimately, we're there as someone to help them. We recognize that we're not supporting individuals who do not have the capabilities, but sometimes individuals come to us who are crushed by the system, who are starting to question themselves because of all the different things that have happened to them, or some who actually do understand what they bring to the table, but still really struggling to navigate through. And with my experience of gaining headship, I gained headship quite quickly, which is rare. However, very quickly, I encountered things, discrimination, racism, and so forth, that really crushed me as a leader. And ultimately, I want to be able to help others have a better toolkit than I had, so that they can, navigate with confidence, and just no matter what they may face, they're knowing that there is agency and there's things that we can do sometimes we have to do it collectively to be able to move the needle forward one more step.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you for the brilliant work that you and the team are doing. If I move us into the second question, I'm going to put these two together because of time. So, do you mean I want the audience to be a bit bolder and a bit more courageous about doing things differently? And I want you just to share some examples around how we can not only dismantle the systemic issues, but actually disrupt how we recruit. So, Lindsay, can I come to you first? Like, you're seeing loads of great practice, but also a lot of probably poor practice. What are some of the things you'd like to share with the audience about, like, some quick wins, perhaps, about how they can go around disrupting how we recruit and how we retain parents?
Yeah, I mean, there's a really simple one around flexible working. So, and I think it was George who said it before about sometimes things are really performative. So putting we're open to flexible working on your job adverts. I mean, that's great. That's a really nice start. But actually what we're seeing in terms of really good practice around this is people listing potential options. You could work condensed hours. We're happy to talk about part-time between 2 days and 4 days. You can apply for this role and say that you would like to do it with a job share partner. Like, giving people the ideas of types of things that they can ask for, and also explaining that that's not an exhaustive list and that they're open to talking about it. Like, just that little logo that says we're open to flexible working actually often is just something that someone in HR has told someone to put on a job advert. And actually, if you do ask about flexible working in the interview, they have no idea how to ask. But also in terms of thinking about flexible working throughout the application process. So are you going to ask candidates about it at the end of the interview? Are you going to wait until the offer stage and then discuss it with them? Are you going to be very clear that there will be a point at some point during the interview process to talk about flexible working? And also just one really simple thing around having policies available before people apply for jobs. Maternity policy should be available and the flexible working policy should be available without people having to look for it. A colleague of mine has just got a new job and she's like, oh, how do I ask them about the maternity policy? Because I'm terrified that that's going to make them realise that I'm planning to have a baby. So just a few really simple things like that can make a big difference.
Yeah, I love that. It's being explicit and being clear and making the information readily available, so we're not digging around trying to find the information we actually need to make an informed decision. So thank you, great starting. Susie, do you want to build on that? Like, what are some of the things that you're giving a good shape to, and what are you doing differently in your setting?
I was really taken by something George said in the first panel, which is that he's nosy. I am obsessed with a job description. I will read any and all job descriptions that I see. And part of the reason for that is because so many job descriptions are so lazy and so poorly written, or they are overly detailed. We know that overly detailed job descriptions put people off applying from underrepresented groups. And I think what I try and do is I try and be very clear about what the job involves, but I don't demand skills that can be learned on the job to be there when you apply. My person specs are really short because it's just not necessary to have a laundry list of attributes from people when we know that we can develop our staff. Another thing that I like to do is offer accommodations as standard when we invite to interview. So I provide interview questions in advance. And if we can offer a choice of in-person or online interview, any kind of private space, quiet space, that kind of thing. I don't want people to have to ask for it if it's something that we can do anyway. Obviously, anything that we don't list that they feel comfortable asking for. But I think you're putting a lot on someone who's already in a vulnerable position as an applicant to then disclose that they might have additional needs. I think that's something, if you can avoid them having to ask for it, you should. And the third thing is that we don't do this at the moment, but it is my dream, is to have information available on the website as standard, such as a map of the site, a map of the buildings, general visitor access instructions, such as this is how you enter the site, this is where you go, this is who you speak to, because it takes away a lot of anxiety. And you know, it's useful for parents and visitors, but it's particularly useful for applicants and people coming to interview, who, again, it takes away a little bit of that nervousness for them, and it benefits everyone.
Yeah, I love that, and I wholeheartedly agree with the leading with what we can do to include you, because I don't need those things, but I still want to work for you because you're doing this in a really authentic way. Going back to the challenging the performativity and the tick boxes, that actually, like, if you list off, we've got a prayer room, we've got halal food, we've got a quiet room, we've got a fridge if you're breastfeeding, like it's pretty basic, isn't it? Rather than waiting for someone to say, pick me, I'm different. These are all the things we can actually support you. So thank you just for detailing that, Susie. Yamina, how about you then, working in ITTE specifically on your project, but like you've got 20 different settings, you've got lots of different advice from different coaches. What are some of the things that you're magpieing or you want to share back to the audience that they can build into their practice?
Yeah, as part of the online course, we had colleagues like, Dr. Professor Paul Miller, we had Anne Palmer, and they just sharing their brilliance. And I've just magpied these, to be fair. But one of the things that Anne Palmer talks about, and actually I see in now with Children Learning Trust and how they do it in terms of recruitment, is around offering flexible, community-focused events as part of their outreach work and their kind of marketing, because there is bias even in marketing and outreach. Who are we accessing? Who are we supporting? We know like Belong in Effect has a diverse workforce, that the jobs board and things like that. But where are you sharing that information, and how are you accessing a diverse range of teachers, essentially? So that's one of the things that I've taken away from Anne Palmer's article around kind of really thinking about how we remove those barriers. And I think what Susie, you said, is really important. As somebody who is from many intersectional marginalized backgrounds, particularly somebody who's neurodiverse, I get a lot of anxiety about, is there going to be halal food? Do I have to say, oh, it's okay, I'll be happy with the vegetarian? Am I going to have a prayer space? Actually, as somebody who's neurodiverse, I'm dyspraxic. I find it really stressful thinking about how do I get to places. If people preempt that and really think about those reasonable adjustments and include that as part of just this is the way we do it here, then actually you're making it really easy in terms of communication, and that kind of inclusive communication is a key part of that. So it's all well and good having a DEI statement to say, hey, we're inclusive, but actually is it performative? So really thinking beyond kind of surface level reforms. And then thinking about, Anne Palmer talked about cultural additivity, and I just love that. Really thinking about actually what do people from diverse backgrounds and perspective bring, and the value that they bring, and actually really demonstrating that you value that. And because we know the research shows that there's a really predominant way in which recruiters think about what an effective teacher looks like, what an effective leader looks like, which is probably contributing to this kind of recruitment crisis, particularly for people with protected characteristics. So really thinking differently about what do these candidates bring. Is somebody who's dyslexic, what will Yamina bring? What will this person bring that's going to be different and powerful in my leadership team? Not a deficit model of thinking. And then just thinking about kind of inclusive recruitment. Actually, once I applied, this is just from my own experience, I applied for a civil service job a while back. And what they did is they actually sent out saying, particularly if you've got these protected characteristics, this is what we'll do to support you. Here's, we're actually really thinking effectively in advance about what we're going to do to support you, rather than like retrospectively. And I just really appreciated that. So even though I didn't want the job, because like Susie was saying and George was saying, just curious about jobs, I just thought it was really powerful to see that's what the civil service do, just as a kind of blanket approach, rather than because I'm somebody who's got diverse and protected characteristics. So those are just some of the things that I'm learning from the project work, but also just from my own experiences.
Yeah, thank you so much. Nadine, you're wearing multiple hats when I ask you this question, but like thinking about how diverse candidates who are going for the more senior roles, the leadership roles, what's your advice to the system, to the audience who are listening, heads, chairs of governors, HR directors, about how they can find, recruit and develop the global majority leaders who want to lead our schools?
Yeah, so ultimately the aim is to reduce bias in all the layers of their recruitment process. One thing I find is really helpful is actually not just thinking I'm going to post it on TAS or so forth, but actually identifying different grassroots organizations and you know, people who are in spaces that have individuals from safe spaces for the global majority, and actually saying, look, signposting you, oh, like, can you signpost this role to your community and so forth, and just realizing that there's not just that one way. Now that's ultimately going to happen now.
Get out of the way.
I have to admit, my company's telling me do not. Right, there you go. My office. I just think that was going to happen when I'm speaking and not when I'm not. But yes. So yeah, so ultimately it's helping them to, you know, again, thinking outside the box ultimately is that, and also going to different community events and so forth, like the AH Summit. Well, I think it's a great example where people are able to build connections and learn about different schools and what people are doing. That's a great opportunity to connect with ambitious individuals who are there and readily available to actually want to step into these positions. So, you know, again, I say it's about branching out from those traditional avenues and actually looking at ways to connect with different organizations and raising a profile of those positions there.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think all four of you are very good at that networking side of it. That, do you mean, if we want diverse candidates to see our adverts, we need to be diversifying our networks and thinking about not only how the adverts and the wording of the job specs is written, but also where they are. And do you mean, you were talking, Susie, about sort of like what's ticked and what's not ticked. I think we often put artificial barriers into a JDPS by saying people have to have things they don't actually need to have. You don't have to have an MPQH to be a head. You don't have to have an ASENCO award to be a SENCO. There are things we'd like you to have, but we can invest in you to get those things. So I think that's something for us all to consider. I often talk about self-deselection. We are often focused on who has applied, and we look at who has got the job, but we're not considering who hasn't applied and why. And we also aren't looking at who didn't make it to the interview stage, and I think also the attrition kind of like data is also something we need to be having a look at.